Hi, everyone. First, I'd like to start by thanking everyone who spoke before me. You guys have done some incredible stuff, and it's quite inspiring. For the past 2.5 weeks, I've been telling people, hey, I'm going to do a talk for TEDx. Wow, that's really cool. What are you going to talk about? And I would be like, I don't know. And honestly, the truth is I know what it is I want to talk about, but for so many years now, there's just been so many aspects to it. Like, where do I zero in? Where do I start? How do I end it? The truth is there's no way to end it because I'm still going. The only thing I can do to keep going forward is to keep looking back and referencing. And every time I do that, I find that I see something else. I didn't grow up in a situation of destitution. Come from a pretty modest background, though. I was adopted, and I lost my father at a very young age. And my mother really struggled to kind of, I guess, manage me as a parent. I remember when I was about 13 years old, a kid who was, I guess, one of the cool kids in school, he came up and he pushed me and he says, "You're such a nerd. You're always walking around carrying a big book or something." And one of my biggest regrets looking back is that actually made me it made me stop carrying big books. And unfortunately, for a time, it made me stop reading them. I somehow managed to graduate high school, and even though I had become quite heavily involved with drugs and whatever other wrong crowds I managed to get myself into. And after 2 terrible semesters of community college, I decided to drop out. And one night, I ended up spending the night on a park bench in the rain, and I ended up waking up and walking down to the recruiting station. And I sat there with a man who was really tired of doing his job, and I said, "What's the fastest way you can get me out of here?" And 27 days later, I was on a plane by myself to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I enlisted as an infantryman in the United States Army. Basic training, probably upon reflection, was the easiest part of my military experience. However, what made it really difficult for me is it was, in a way, for me, it was rehab. I had only been a couple of months away from drug usage, and truthfully, I'd never really had any form of important responsibility in my life. This was the first time ever. And I went from cutting up pizzas and making Italian subs to firing fully automatic weapons in a matter of months. So that was a pretty interesting transition. And transitions is the words that I really want to focus on, because not just soldiers, not just veterans, everybody who is trying to take charge of their life is going to do that through a series of transitions. So this was my first big transition. I'm all of a sudden a soldier. I served with the 10th Mountain Division. They're out of Fort Drum, New York, and we spent 15 months in Iraq in one of the hottest areas during the conflict in 2006 and 2007. We were part of the Bush administration's surge, which poured over 40,000 extra troops into the country. And at the high point of the deployment, there was a very tragic incident. Just down the road from where my unit was staying, there was an ambush just before dawn. Some trucks had been surrounded on the low ground, and they managed to throw grenades in the turrets, and several soldiers were kidnapped. Now, that is a tragic thing. And when we think about wars, one of the things that we can think about is POWs. But in this modern warfare, particularly against fighting terrorism, one of the last things that can happen is that your soldiers can be dragged away alive. And we went on a manhunt that lasted for 2.5 weeks. At times, we weren't sleeping for 36 hours at a time. It got pretty intense, and the amount of violence that happened in such a short time, well, that could be another talk. The outcome of that didn't result in us actually finding all of our guys alive. Unfortunately, they all died. But something I didn't realize for quite some time was how it bonded all of us in that. Truthfully, the majority of us who were looking for these guys didn't even know them. I might have exchanged a few words with Alex Jimenez, who was one of the ones that was kidnapped. He was from Massachusetts, as am I. But we weren't friends. We didn't share life stories or anything. But we did share a uniform. And up until then, I think that understanding of brotherhood, because of regardless of race or background or religion, that you were wearing a uniform made you a brotherhood or a sisterhood, a family. It wasn't until after that that I started to begin to understand that. So we all grew to be galvanized by that. And when many of us, myself included, left the military, what I discovered is that I didn't have a family anymore. That was my next transition. I came out and I hit the ground running. I started working full-time. I went back to community college, started correcting my mistakes. But what I was finding is that I was just going by the numbers. I was not passionate about anything. I had no one I was working for. Yeah, I had a boss, I had a supervisor, I had a job, I had a paycheck. But there was, the guy next to me wasn't there anymore. There was no person in my life that made me need to do my best, other than myself. Just recently, I stumbled upon a TED Talk that featured Sebastian Junger. And he gave some insight into why soldiers, why veterans miss war. And after taking that in, the senior class was about to graduate. And a friend of mine, his father, happened to be visiting campus. And he and I and several of my friends, we went to a shooting range. And this friend's father, he's a colonel in the Air Force. He's been a pilot for over 20 years. And we've never met before, but he said to me, "Do you miss it?" And I said, "Yeah, I really do." And we got to talking. We had two different experiences in the military. We weren't even in the same branch, and we'd never met each other before. We had different jobs. Yet at the same time, we were able to share this feeling, this knowledge of knowing what it is to serve in the military, to serve for a dangerous cause. And it hit me that even though I don't spend day to day with the people that are going to save my life and that I'm going to save theirs, and we completely and utterly dedicate ourselves to each other, that I haven't lost that ability to commit myself to the things in life that way. And that I don't need other soldiers or service members to kind of feel that way. What I realized is that through the transitions I was making to the military, within the military and out, I realized that I'd become lost in myself, always looking for the next mission, instead of being able to pay attention to the people around me who were closest, the ones who cared. And luckily, since coming to this college, I've had the incredible experience of being able to not only share my experiences in combat, loss, and just the morality of life itself that I've learned through everything. I haven't just had the ability to share it in places like this, but I've been able to share it with people who I have grown to love, and I have been able to inspire them, and in turn they have been able to inspire me. So this next transition that I have decided to make for myself is through everything that I have learned. I don't want it to go to waste. I've learned that the things that you do in life, whether you serve in the military or purify a river or teach young girls how to use computer software so they have a better life, you can't just stop. You can't put it down. You have to keep going until you are physically incapable of doing that anymore. And before that, I think the most important thing to do is ensure that all the great things that you have learned in life, that you have passed on to somebody or multiple persons, so that way they can keep on going and we can keep making progress. So I want to thank everybody for this opportunity for me to be able to have shared some of what I have gone through. And I want to thank TEDxDartmouth for hosting this wonderful event. Thank you.